Yes.
Well, welcome everybody. I think we'll try and get started because we usually talk for about an hour and we want to make sure that we give you plenty of time to ask questions. My name's Rachel and I met our main speaker this evening, Chloe, over 20 years ago, and I've been working with her and involved with Mendability ever since. Chloe's our main speaker, as I said, and she is the creator of sensory enrichment therapy. She might look like she's 25, but she's been doing this for a long time. Leah, are we?
Yeah, we
Good.
just had some feedback going.
Okay,
I think
well,
we're good now.
we're trying something that we haven't done before this evening, and that is a live presentation with the live stream. So there is people watching on YouTube, and we're really grateful to the TLA, the Traditional Learning Academy, for setting this all up. It's, you know, they've been wonderful and hosting us and making the live stream available. So we hope it will be useful and informative for you. And we're going to try this format of live plus distance. So if you're here with us and you've got a question, it's really important to us that everything's clear to you. So feel free to ask questions, and then we should have time at the end for questions as well. And for people who are online, I think Leo's going to facilitate any questions that they have. Great. So without any further ado, I'm going to do a little introduction, kind of a background of what is sensory enrichment therapy and some of the studies that have been published, and then I'll hand over to Chloe for the main part. We hope that this evening will give you useful, practical concepts that you can take home and use straight away, or take with you into your work environment and use straight away. I'm going to use notes because otherwise I talk too much. And I really want to make sure that you have time for your questions. Before we dive into some kind of theoretical stuff about our senses and the brain, I'm just going to give you an example of a little boy who did sensory enrichment therapy, kind of a before and after. So here's a young man, his name's Jaden, and he was diagnosed with autism when he was 2. His parents sought treatment, and so he did ABA and worked with an occupational therapist. But when it came time for him to go to school, his symptoms weren't improving, and his parents realized that he wouldn't do well in a regular school setting. So around his 6th birthday, his mum came across sensory enrichment therapy, and that's when this video footage was taken. You can see, he was a runner. He would wander off and try and escape, get out of the house. He was really agitated. He couldn't play. He was not completely non-verbal. He had one word. If you can guess what it was? No. But he did have some limited passive vocabulary. He could take somebody by the hand and take them to the door to show them that he needed to get out, that kind of thing. Well, here's Jaden 6 months later, after he's been doing sensory enrichment therapy at home. You'll see he's making eye contact. He's interacting with the assistant. He's calmer, he's more collected, he's more focused. You can just see the expression on his face has changed. At this point, he developed about 40 words. And these, you know, for his family, these were really exciting results and progress to be seeing. The therapy that we're going to talk about this evening helps children, but also adults. You'll see later we have some examples of adults that we've worked with. And Chloe's going to talk about challenges related to attention and speech. Sensory enrichment therapy is not just for speech and attention span, but that's what we chose as something that she would focus on this evening. So, moving on from Jaden. Jaden did sensory enrichment therapy he did the full program that we're going to tell you about tonight. It's called sensory enrichment therapy because when you do the program at home or at school with an assistant, you're using sensory-based activities. And so this is a branch of an area of neuroscience called environmental enrichment. Sensory enrichment therapy is part of environmental enrichment. And basically, what environmental enrichment is all about is modifying the kind of sensory experiences that you have to impact the way that your brain works and the way it develops. The protocols that make up the therapy are short and simple. They will probably look very natural to you, but this therapy has been the subject of randomized controlled trials that got really exciting results. And the trials have been replicated to show the effectiveness of the therapy. Another way to describe sensory enrichment therapy is to say what it's not. It's not sensory integration, and it's not just for sensory processing issues. You know how speech therapy targets speech, or physical therapy targets physiological things. Well, sensory enrichment therapy is really, if you wanted to kind of go home and explain it to somebody, it's a brain therapy. We're enriching sensory experiences in a way that's adapted to the needs of that individual person to affect the way their brain performs in a wide variety of areas. So I hope you'll remember that it's a brain therapy. And these are some of the areas that are then impacted by those sensory experiences and sensory enrichment. At Mendability, when we look at children or adults who are having challenges that make their lives more difficult, we're really looking at how we can use sensory enrichment therapy to improve their brain function in the areas that they're having challenges with. So the label doesn't really matter to us. It's not specifically an autism therapy or specifically a dyslexia therapy or an OCD therapy. It's a brain therapy. If you think about, let me give you a couple of examples. An adult who rocks back and forth, or a child who just runs all the time. The urge to run, or the anxiety that prompts the rocking back and forth, those things start in the brain, needing to move, or the anxiety that shows itself in that behavior. So deficiencies in the brain or challenges in the brain are at the root of most of the challenges that we see, whether it's learning or memory or eating, and each of those challenges is controlled by brain functions, and that's what we're working on. I hope it makes sense to you that if we can identify the brain functions that need help and then find a way to improve those brain functions, the symptoms related to that brain function will improve, maybe disappear. Scientists have done lots and lots of research with animals that give us some ideas on how to target those brain functions. So here's a little cartoon for you, just a minute of somebody else speaking.
Years ago, research scientist Mark Rosenzweig did an innovative experiment. He created an enriched environment for rats. Some rats were introduced into an environment with all the fun, food, smells, and toys a rat could dream of. Others were given only food and water. Then he compared slices of both rats' brains. The rats' brains in the enriched environment were bigger, heavier, and had more blood vessels, neurons, and connections.
I hope you agree with me. That's really exciting. What they found was that some other research found that rats with neurological disorders that were then given pleasant sensory stimulation would outperform typical rats that had been in a standard environment. These are really significant findings. So Professor Rosenzweig's work then started decades of research that over the last few decades have proven that our brain is in fact capable of changing its structure, changing its chemistry. And this whole concept is brain plasticity, which is really key to sensory enrichment therapy. Here's a look at somebody you may have heard of whose work relates directly to brain plasticity. This is Dr. Temple Grandin. If you work with anybody or care for anybody on the autism spectrum, you've probably heard of her. She's a professor of animal science at Colorado State University, but she's also a world famous spokesperson for autism. And she was one of the first people to speak up about her publicly, about her personal experience of autism. Time magazine even named her one of the 100 most influential people in the world. So her dissertation was about environmental enrichment and the neurological development of pigs. And this was part of her conclusion. I'm going to read this here. The rearing environment had a significant effect in dendritic growth in the cortex of young pigs. Well, dendritic growth means the brains grew more and more connections. So here's a picture of real dendrites and neurons, and I'm just going to keep clicking, and you should see this picture on the right change. There we go. These are that's what more connections looks like. That's a reproduction of real neurons from animals that were exposed to environmental enrichment who grew more connections. And dendritic growth, or more connections, is not the only thing that happens in the brain when the person experiences, or the animal experiences, environmental enrichment. There's a whole list on the left here of other things that happen. And as that earlier cartoon said, scientists have found that enriched brains have more neurons, more blood vessels, and the brain is actually heavier. So it kind of makes sense that with more brain, you can do more things. This is a list of human disorders that scientists have researched with animals. So they ask the question, does boosting brain development help compensate for neurological disorders? And so this is a whole load of disorders that they've replicated in animals, and then taken those animals and given them environmental enrichment. So expose them to sensory motor experiences. And the ones with stars are the disorders that they use to replicate autism in animals. The most important thing that they found, as we already said, was that some of these animals that had been in an enriched environment with these disorders actually outperformed the typical animals. So if it works so well with animals, then the question is, what about humans? And I'm just going to spend a few more minutes to introduce Claudie, because answering that question, what about humans, is really her life's work. So in the mid-1970s, a little while ago, Claudie was a neuroscience student in France. And at university, she learned about environmental enrichment and brain plasticity. She had family members and friends who'd been afflicted by neurological disorders. And so when she heard about brain plasticity and how an enriched environment affects the brain, she was so excited, and that gave her hope. And learning that this simple way of stimulating the brain's ability to improve itself by creating the right environment became her life's mission, to develop a human model to implement environmental enrichment. And she didn't just go to lectures, read tons of books and read tons of articles. She did do that, but as well as that, she met with scientists. She called the people who were publishing the things that she was reading to really understand what they were finding and to be able to translate it into protocols that would work with people. So sensory enrichment therapy is built on all of this scientific, protocols done in the lab that Claudia has then translated to things that people can use at home. And sometimes there is some human research, and that if there's published work that's been done directly with humans, then she's used that as well. So what kind of things has she done? All kinds of things. Claudia's first, she wrote a book that was published by Hachette, which is a really big European publishing house. She developed lines of toys that won awards in France. And the first implementation of her work was in daycares in France. And they did a pilot study. Some children did sensory enrichment, some children didn't. And the results from that were so encouraging that the National Committee for Scientific Research said to Claudia, you need to take this to sick children. And she worked with the team in the Necker Children's Hospital, which is in Paris, for a while, and did a study there that got great success. And then she had an opportunity to come to Canada, which is why we're here tonight, and not in France. But after 30 years, sensory enrichment therapy could still maybe be considered a little bit experimental. And so along came an opportunity to do a university study here in North America and really prove the effectiveness of the therapy. This is Dr. Michael Leon, and he had interacted with Claudia because some of her protocols are based on his work. And when he had a friend in the early 2000s who came to him and said, look, you're a brain specialist, and this is my daughter, and she's having all these challenges with mood and behavior. Dr. Leon said, I know of this lady up in Canada, you should talk to her. And so his friend started doing sensory enrichment therapy with his daughter. And 6 months later, when he went back to Dr. Leon to say, look how great she's doing. Her behaviors had disappeared. Dr. Leon was astounded and decided it's time to do a study on this. And so he chose autism as the disorder that he was going to study and came to Claudia and said, can you give me exercises and protocols from sensory enrichment therapy that we can use for our study? And that study ended up being award-winning. The results were so exciting, and the paper got Best Neuroscience Paper of the Year. Because what can I tell you about Dr. Leon? He's not just any professor. He's the associate dean at the School of Biological Sciences at the University of California in Irvine. He won Professor of the Year Award in 2007, and he's currently at their Center for Autism Research. So Claudia designed the protocols, and they did this study that got amazing results. One of the reasons that the study got the award was because it was really rigorously done. They were very strict about screening all the participants, making sure that they matched kids for age and severity and what kind of therapies that they were doing. The only difference between the control and the pilot group was that the kids doing sensory enrichment therapy added in sensory enrichment therapy. The control kids kept doing all the therapies they were doing, and the pilot children kept doing all the therapies they were doing and added sensory enrichment on top. And I just want to take like 2 more minutes to show you some of the results because they were amazing. Here, sorry, I clicked too many times. That's the one I want. No, this one here. One of the key findings was the CARS scale, which is a standard autism measurement. And 6 times as many children in the pilot group made clinically significant improvement. So clinically significant improvement is an increase of 5 points on the CARS scale. And 7% of the children in the control group made progress, clinically significant progress, doing their regular therapies. But 42%, 6 times as many kids in the pilot group who had added in sensory enrichment therapy, made clinically significant progress on the CAST scale. And then this second chart here is to show the increase in IQ. The kids in the pilot group actually increased their IQ by over 8 points, which is phenomenal because usually an IQ doesn't change. Then that was published in 2013, and 2 years later, Dr. Leon and his team published a replication study that also got amazing results, really, really exciting results. So I'm now going to hand over to Claudie because the exercises that we used in this study are she's going to talk about a couple of them this evening. And you really want to hear from her. So that's a replication study. And we have also done an internal study using over 1,000 children who used our online system. And I can tell you more about that later, but I'm going to hand over to Claudie. There you go.
All right. I just want to add one comment. We talk about sensory enrichment therapy and environmental enrichment. The therapy is about the brain, as Rachel said, and it is about anything that the brain does. So it is going to be also movement, fine motor, gross motor, and all the variations of activities are included in the therapy. So the children will do so many different things. And the particularity maybe is the combination of things, not doing one thing and then later another, like combining smell and touch, or vision and music, or everything together. So when we ask the families, what are the main problems when you look at your child or at your adult? What is the issue that is maybe going to cause difficulty to become independent or succeed and completely fulfill what you want as a person? Well, these two were the main issues: attention span and speech. And we work with children who combine that to many other issues, but I'd like to talk about these two more specifically. I have to remember which button I need to click. It must not be this one. So let's say this one. Which one do I click? The one on the right there? Well, there we go. Oh, it worked. Excellent. All right. So, who has attention span problems? Well, a lot of us. Okay, we have a volunteer to be talking tonight. Yes, a lot of people have some moments in life, oh dear, I have to do so many things and we don't finish any of them. Or it is part of you and you just cannot complete any task. You cannot focus more than 7 seconds in the classroom. So the teacher has to repeat if the teacher is available to repeat and if there is enough time for that. Or it is going to become a tragedy for you because you're going to miss out and miss out again. And organizations, so that is fantastic school that works online and has dedicated teachers, can help tremendously. But so much energy has to be spent there. So the children that we have helped had a tremendous issue with attention span. And what we know about the brain is, okay, the brain can change, and it's possible to make that change happen because of the core issues that are behind attention span and speech. So what Rachel was mentioning, if a child has a speech problem, then he's going to meet with a speech therapist who is going to try to make that person, that adult, that teenager, pronounce sounds or blow bubbles, like work on the mouth. When I see a child, if I assess a child or teenager or an adult who is not talking, I am going to look at the partners of speech or the partners of attention span and how the brain is functioning and why in the brain is there a problem that prevents attention. And this is right there, the biochemistry of the brain and the connections. It's been found in children with ADHD or on the spectrum that they are short in the production of one specific little messenger in the brain called serotonin. And we're going to see really briefly and hopefully in a clear way what is serotonin and what does it do? Why do we need it? And a dysfunction of dopamine, we're also going to see what it is, but these two are dysfunctional essential parts of the brain. And if it doesn't work, you can try to tell this kid, you have to focus. He can't, because the brain says, no, I'm not. I won't do that. So let's look at it. And first of all, let's take a look at that picture. We mentioned, you heard the name maybe of Rosenzweig. He is the author of the biggest textbook for students at university studying neurology. And these drawings that I'm using are from his book with permission. And he's one of those that I could speak to when he was still around. And this picture in particular is maybe for you looks like a platter of spaghettis or something. But in fact, it shows us very close up the brain cells. And why do we want to look at it with excitement? Because it shows us all the hope that we all have because of those cells. One thing that you see here, I hope you can see them from far, is that one branch has grown. It's not exactly looking like it's showing, okay, this kind of the definition of growth in the brain. The branches just extend. And one part of the brain can suddenly, connect with the others, more tools. All the brain cells have little buds on their branches, like a tree. And those buds mean, okay, just give me the right information and I'm going to grow those into more branches. And this is a picture that Rachel showed you of real neurons, like not many, then more, and then plenty of them. So this is a very exciting picture, I'm telling you. So now, why do we need to know more about serotonin and dopamine? Because they are dysfunctional in many functions. And if they don't work well, there is no attention span and no speech, no proper feeding, no sleep, etc. One thing that is very interesting about the brain cells is that they communicate in two different ways. They use electricity and they use chemistry. So electricity, real electricity, if you have someone who ever had EEG, it's a measure of the electrical activity in the brain. So that you see that there is real electricity in our brain, but there is also one specific thing about the brain cells that is really, really particular to the brain and makes it all possible. I would like to compare it to other cells in the body. Let's say the skin cells or bone cells or liver cells. All those cells are connected together, attached together so that they can do their job. For example, the skin, the cells have to be attached. Otherwise, you would have cells floating and what is in would go out and vice versa. So we need to have our cells attached. Same for the bone cells. If the bone cells were not attached, we will not be able to stand, right? Their job is to stand and help hold our whole body. Well, the brain cells are not attached. They come close to each other, but they never attach. Why is that interesting? Well, it is interesting because let's imagine that this brain cell gets broken for some kind of reason. A brain injury, a trauma of some sort, toxicity, something. That brain cell dies. Well, that's fine. It can be put away and another cell will come and grow and replace it. You can't really do that with a skin cell. You can't. You need to cut a big piece of it and it's not really fine. But for the brain cells, they can move around. And they have made those studies and now you can go on YouTube and see brain cells growing and really changing places. It's called, for example, migration, where cells go from one place to another because they're needed. We have found brain cells in the liver. They were able to put a marker on a cell that is growing and not yet affected to a spot, and it would grow and go through very specific channels and help other organs in the body. It's amazing. So this is where it becomes important to know about serotonin, dopamine, and all the other guys. The cells are close to each other, so the electricity can go all along, but there is something about electricity. I'm not really knowing much about it, but I know that for electricity from the wall to go to the computer, we need a contact. If there is no contact, then there is no flow of electricity. So the electricity comes over here at the end of every brain cell and stops. So the message that was going to be transferred from one place to another doesn't go anywhere unless this electricity opens little containers full of little molecules, hormones, serotonin, dopamine as an example, and they go from this cell, go to the next, give the message, and come back. And that is true for dopamine, for all the other guys. I'm talking a lot about serotonin and dopamine because of what we do. What scientists have found is it is possible to change the chemistry of the brain by using specific activities of the senses. For example, the sense of smell, and we'll talk about it in a minute. I'll talk and you listen, that's our job, and I hope you will have questions. Is using our senses tells the brain, oh, we need more of that. There is an incredible activity happening through information of the environment, then the brain activity. So let's look at what they are for real, each of them, at least the two that I was talking about. There we go. So serotonin. So imagine children with learning deficits or adults with learning deficits. They don't have enough serotonin. And that has been verified, measured by all kinds of different devices. Yeah, they don't have enough serotonin, which means what? All the activities on the list don't happen well or don't happen at all. Serotonin is in charge of sleep. If you don't have enough serotonin, you don't sleep. Feeding. Your serotonin is not good, then you are going to overeat or not eat enough because the messages are wrong. And that is true for all that. You don't have enough serotonin. This is not happening. Learning is one of them. Then let's talk about dopamine. We know a lot about dopamine because unfortunately there are two terrible conditions of humans that are directly linked to dopamine. And when we look at what dopamine does, you can see in there something that are really crucial. And I'll talk only about the first two, movement and memory. What is the condition where movement is a huge problem? You can tell me. Yes. Parkinson's disease is a horrible condition where the factories that make dopamine in the brain disappear. Poof, they're gone. And we know where they are because that's have been studied. Why do they go? Where are they? Can we replace them? And unfortunately today, except for what we do, maybe, we haven't found something that you can take by mouth that will give you the dopamine you need, at least not to repair the damage. So what is dopamine doing as far as movement is concerned? Well, our body is supposed to be in movement constantly. Every part of our body should be constantly moving. And dopamine is there to control it and to say, you're going to move only what you need. So we can either stay still, or we can sit and not move, or we can lay down and rest. If you do not have the right dopamine function, well, all that is gone. So the child who is sitting on the chair cannot stay still. Physically, he cannot. He would like to, and he wants to please the parents and the teacher, but his brain says we're not standing still. We are not paying attention. We need to move. So memory is the other one that has, unfortunately, a reputation as far as disease. Which one is it that comes to your mind? Alzheimer's. There you go, thank you. Yes, Alzheimer's, dementia. People suddenly lose everything that was in there. They end up not even remembering how to breathe and how to swallow. Like their brain really vanishes, and everything that's related to learning is gone. And what was found is that those people, like people in Parkinson's disease or ADHD, have a dopamine function that is a mess and in fact gradually stops. So there is sometimes an intervention where they give L-DOPA, for example, to people to help them just for at least 15 minutes so that they can stand up, go to the bathroom, or have a moment of where they can connect with their family. But L-DOPA will kill you, and eventually it's not fixing it. It's just helping you for a moment. So we definitely need it to know, okay, how can we do it? And is the brain made to get better? And the answer, we've seen it, yeah. The brain is made to get better, to improve, to constantly learn and develop. And there's never a time when it's over. So we know where dopamine starts. We know what it does. And if we don't have enough, attention span, for example, will be a big problem. Okay, I was mentioning earlier that some of us sometimes don't have the motivation to go. So what do we do? Or what do we do to the children to help them stay still, listen to the teacher, right? Do your homework. Stimulants. So none of us put anything but water in the cup, right? Of course, we drink only water or the apple juice. So that's a big cup of apple juice or anything that is going to give you the boost. Okay, I didn't sleep last night, but I'm still going to go to work. Same situation with the child. Doesn't have the motivation. Is not able to learn. Okay, we give him a stimulant that will have for the 8 hours that are coming. There is always a price to pay when you tell the brain something that is not true, such as, oh, we've got all the dopamine we need. Oh, we have the serotonin, no worries. So I want to share with you a little adorable situation. You never ever saw a tantrum. That's why I'm showing you. No one has seen that. I want you to, maybe for the first time, for some of you, see what the sense of smell can do to the brain when you lose control. And you can take that home and do it. I didn't ask you to count, but it takes only seconds to go from complete loss of control, emotional distress to calm and in control. How come it can happen? So you have a sample of that possibility. Maybe you're still sitting on it. If you can access it, take it and smell it. It's tangerine. I'm very cautious. It's very nice. I hope you like it. That's all what it takes. And why does it work? Why does it suddenly go from this catastrophe of emotion to calm? Maybe some of you know the name of the little factory for tantrums in the brain. It's a very tiny little thing, not even big like that. Start with an A.
Amygdala.
There you go. The amygdala is where everything explodes. The overload of everything that can happen in the amygdala. And the amygdala is located behind the nose, like maybe 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters in. And how do we get to the amygdala? By smelling. And it was scientifically measured that a scent will reach into the amygdala and suddenly settle whatever disorder and catastrophe is happening there. That's nature for you, that you can take home or be home and do it. Use the sense of smell. That's my first present. I have more. So how did they know? And how did I discover? Well, animal research, they are really nice with us. Look at the little hands, they're so cute. So they studied the animal model. They made them smell. They put some nice scent on the litter, and it was adorable. And they measured with devices what was happening in their brain when they were exposed to smell. So be ready. Just for you to know, when anything that you create changes human condition by 3%, you can go and get the Nobel Prize. Because it's almost impossible to generally improve human condition for a good, and the situation will stay. So how much do you think we get in an increase in dopamine? Okay, dopamine is memory, good mood, motivation, attention span. How much can we increase it by smelling? Okay, I'll let you think. More than 3%, okay? So how much do you think?
15?
Not bad. Okay, somebody has better?
Just smell.
Yes,
50.
50, okay. I have better for you. 100%. So you go from where you are, you have twice as much. And it will stay with you for what has been measured about an hour and a half. So you just smell, or you bring a delicious aroma to your child, and already you are giving an addition of dopamine. But there's even better. We can, and this is what Michael Ian did, if we pair smelling to anything else that's sensory and pleasurable and very easy to do, such as smell and soft touch. Is it worth it? Does it cost anything? No. Like, that's knowledge you take home, and already you can see a difference. Absolute fabulous, right? And it's so simple. They found, as they were studying what is happening in the brain if you give 2 sensory information that are pleasurable at the same time, that not only you increase serotonin production, dopamine production, but also norepinephrine, which is a cousin of dopamine and is one of the key to build new cells in the brain. So you can see the impact of doing one thing or two that are simple.
In the lower half of the line.
Okay. These are exercises for mendability.
Following through the inside of the palm.
Very complicated, very difficult equipment to find.
Hold 4 or 5 objects on one hand first, one finger at a time, one object at a time. Do not rush the process.
So every worksheet that we create to help the child improve attention span, speech, and so forth has a combination of exercises, and every worksheet has videos, audio. So it's so simple to do. Like, it's never impossible for anybody to just make sense of it and implement it, or in a classroom to just do it for a few minutes at a time. And we did a study in Alberta for 3 years, where we had all the children in the classroom do what we call the multi-sensory core protocol. Very complicated, meaning smell, smell and look, visual and smell, tactile. And we were doing these 3. And we compared the results of the children who were doing it and those who were not at the end of every school year with a standard test of the school. In some areas, some children were 400% better. In one thing that we did not work with, because we worked on the brain, some of the children were able, and try it at home if you want, to stand on one foot, arms on the front, eyes closed. Humans can do that for 3-4 seconds. The kids could do it for more than a minute. And again, that's just improving how the brain works, and everything is impacted. So that study, we had a few samples when we were working with children coming to see me. And this is a girl with severe learning disability, very severe. She's lovely, she is very delicate, she makes jewelry, she is absolutely an angel, but she cannot sound a letter. You show her letters, she cannot. Her brain is not connected. And she started Mendability. And over a period of 10 months, I'm not sure that you can read the result. She went from a C student in a special needs classroom to a B student in mainstream. And over this period of 10 months, she caught up the grades that she had left behind. Just her brain became able to retain knowledge, organize knowledge, and just make it use. So we do not work, and Rachel said it, we work with the brain. If I do an assessment, as I said, I'm not looking at what we see, I'm looking at why is it happening. So it doesn't matter who comes with the brain, as long as the person is alive, right? So let's talk about speech, because the young man that I showed you there didn't have any speech when we started. And most children or adults or teenagers I work with do not have speech when we first work. Speech is one of the most complicated brain activity because it involves so much of the brain that it takes really almost nothing for speech not to happen. It's a little bit like a car. You have a really nice, oh, I did not notice there was snow on that. It's the first time I see the snow. We brought it from Alberta. So this big car, nice, runs perfectly, and then you open it and you take, oh, I'm gonna take that out. And suddenly the car stops working. Just a tiny little thing. You take it out and the whole car stops doing its job. It's the same, a little bit, with speech. Speech involves all that, okay? So you need to have all this working well for speech to happen. And like for the car, you just take one little piece, and that little piece is not working well. Speech is not happening. So when I start working with a young adult who can't talk yet. I'm gonna make maybe use one of the functions that are really doing a good job for him. Let's say fine motor, okay? And I'm going to do an exercise with the fingers. I don't go and work with the mouth because the words are not there. Like I know people have checked, words are not in the mouth, right? They are in the brain. Emotion expression, saying what you need. I want a pizza, 3 cheese. I need to be able to say that, right? So this is another example of a child who's very healthy. Everything works, but 1 or 2 little things. That's him when I first met him. He's 2 years old. He doesn't talk. He does not interact with the family. All he does is run all day. And he may scream a little bit. So we start working with him. And initially it's hard to implement some of the exercises because he's not sitting down, right? Well, except there, but otherwise you need to catch him. So it takes a little bit of time to figure out what is going to work with him. And that's him 2 years after that.
Hi, my name is Enzo. Today we are going to show you my airplane.
And
Here
I
we have
remember spending a lot of time reassuring the parents that he will never talk.
rational.
But not only does he speak, but he's bilingual because parents speak Spanish at home and he speaks English at school. While I did not do anything around the mouth, I worked on the hand, on the sense of touch, I worked on visual, and gradually help his brain reconnect or connect the part that needed to communicate so that speech could happen. So how do the children or young adults or adults learn how to speak? Well, they need to see you speak with them. They need to listen. They need to be spoken to. And we'll discuss conversation in a second. You can take note of those because they are some of the keys that we are going to try to use to help the children or the adults to speak. This is the speech protocol that I tell the parents to use as soon as we see some of the first steps of speech happen. And the first steps of speech are the same for all human beings, that sometimes they start when he is 10 or when he is 40. You need to, you need to play with your spit, you need to look at bubbles, you need to maybe suck your fingers, all these little things that build up all the various functions. And some you may have noticed, maybe not, but being in a school environment, that when a person doesn't speak, the adults tend to speak louder. Have you noticed that? And I had an experiment recently. I'm legally blind. I don't show it. But recently we went out to get some service done. I go with Rachel and I tell the lady, oh, I'm legally blind. She's going to read the document. And suddenly the person stops looking at me and converse like she, I'm still there. But the handicap made me vanish in thin air. No diet can do that to you. And it's the same with speech. The kid doesn't talk, so we speak loud. And I tell the parents, he's not deaf. He just can't put the sounds out, at least in an organized manner. So this is the thing that you take home and that you do every day for 10 minutes. You start having a conversation. You speak softly. You hold his hand. You touch her face. And you ask questions that the answer is not yes or no, because some of them can do So no, say, why do you prefer blue? And, so we wait for the answer to start working. Most of the people, the kids, adults who don't talk, understand what is going on and understand the words. They take more time to sound them in their mind and have a mental image of what they want to say. But so we need to give the time for that to start happening. And typically, after a certain amount of time, if we also add the therapy to it to help the brain figure it out, well, conversation is suddenly a two-way in that. So this is Cody. And the first time I meet with him, this is our first session, he's 41 years old. Can we make this lower? On the side of the clicker. Oh, yeah, is a magic button. Well, I could do it by feel, but I'm cheating here. Because it's going to be loud. So it's our first meeting. And what we did was an experiment. We told the group home, send us your 5 worst cases, people that you feel you're not going to be able to do anything with. So they sent Cody, and no words, no interaction, and the world is mean to him. He is afraid of everything. So during that first meeting, one of the things I need to know, can he use his sense of smell? Is he smelling properly? So I offer him a smell. Look what he does with it. Put it on his ear. Has no idea. So we have a tool that we want to be using. So the big thing, mode of communication sometimes with nonverbal people is the high five. So he was doing high five and you go, whoa, because he's kind of a big guy. So I started to also teach him, okay, let's say something differently, like a nice little thumb on your hand. So it's only a month. He's come for 1 session a day, and I was doing the session myself. One of the things that was really not functioning for him was a sense of touch because of the high five, and everything else was so terrifying or painful. So I invite him. I make him discover, and gradually he learns that, oh, it can be fun. If you develop your sense of touch, guess what improves in your brain? Serotonin. Using soft touch will increase serotonin production in the brain. And soft touch is the mechanoreceptors, just bending the hair, not more than that. And the brain suddenly says, oh, we're producing more serotonin. Okay, I gave you already 2, right? 2 tools to take home to increase serotonin and dopamine. So we increase dopamine how? Yes. Here I made a bet. I said, okay, he's not ever gone to school. He will never learn. He is going to say the letter P. I taught him 2 letters. There you go. And that's me being all excited. There is not a time when, oh, it's too late. Never. As far as learning is concerned, and I'm sure that you fantastic teachers in that school know that, never too late. We can always learn. Just sometimes we need to open the doors in a different way. And maybe brand new doors that nobody ever thought about using. And suddenly this brain is expanding and is becoming able to learn. So that's our fabulous tool for conversation and speech, not for only those who talk already. And something that is so cute that sometimes we forget to do is praise. Whatever happens, whenever it looks like there's an effort that's made, praise. So that, okay, oh, that was good, let me try again. And it is true for any type of learning and effort. So that's what we said. That's what I said. 1 or 2 questions before we give back to floor to Rachel for more info. No question, please.
Can it be overdone? Like if too
No.
many over?
The wonderful thing about doing what's right for the brain is if you do a soft touch to someone, it's nice for a minute and then you go. And we don't hold and touch, right? So we let the child or the adult say, okay, I'm done. Smelling is the same. If you put an aroma in the room, which I recommend, tell the parents, have the rooms have identity and smell this or that. So when you go into the room, it feels great. But if you stay in the room, you don't smell it anymore. It is still smelling really nice, but the brain did, okay, I'm done. Reach the threshold and stop working, because our brain wants to save energy. So it will do the job for 3, 4, 5 seconds, and then you can keep on doing it. There is no exhaustion because we follow how the brain works and we go into its direction at the right pace. Rachel was mentioning that our exercises are extremely short because we work at the speed of the brain. In learning, for example, your tables, right? You need to rehearse and rehearse because they don't have a real spot in the brain to anchor. So you need to repeat a number of times. But if I do a soft touch, if you all want to touch your hand or your cheek, when do you know it? Right away. Because that's a message that the brain captures right away and processes instantly. So starting a class with an awareness, with raising the dopamine production, serotonin, you have kids who are calmer and who are more able to learn. And you can do just 2 minutes as you start your class or as you start your activity, and suddenly this brain can do the job. Yes?
So how long the results stay? So let's say you're smelling and it increases your dopamine.
So what has been measured is you keep it for about an hour and a half. You're high, sort of. But in Mendability, we will tell you, okay, it would be a great idea if you did it every 2 hours. If we have a specific plan, if the anxiety is really high. But it's how often do you kiss somebody you love, right? You can do that every 2 hours, give a kiss and do a nice smell. Yes?
What can be done if young adult who doesn't want to be touched and very, very quiet, withdrawn, never cause any trouble, but
Yes.
very low mood and
I have an exercise for touch that you don't. Most of the kids on the spectrum and ADHD hate touch. And a piece of information that maybe you did not know, I hope that I look smart because I tell you tonight, is that for some areas of the body, the brain, so the information goes to the top of the brain, in fact, sense of touch, we're good, and suddenly, poof, instead of going to the area to process soft and gentle, it is rerouted towards pain. So this startle and don't touch me, they do feel uncomfortable. So we need to rehabilitate. And so we don't do that, but we're going to create a path with different funny textures and bare feet. And even if he doesn't understand the request, you put it in the hallway going to the bathroom, he's gonna walk on it several times a day. We have so many receptors on the foot sole. And gradually the brain is learning how to organize information. So it is possible to have what we call passive enrichment, where it happens, for example, if you put a nice scent in your classroom as a teacher, you're not doing anything really, but all the kids have a dopamine increase. And that's passive, right? You're not asking them to do something. So we have the tricks because I've done that for 200 years, so I have it. One more question before we let Rachel.
Oh, with the sense of smell, is there a specific scent?
No.
Any?
Something that is enjoyable. That's the only rule. There has been very little studies done on the impact of that smell and that smell and that smell. So some people will love and feel really good smelling lavender, and others are going to be annoyed. It's a lot about your experience, your memory of things. So choose something that your loved one or your student loves. That's it. Can be. I have to tell you though that for a very good impact to stop a tantrum, we have been using strawberry, and it's not natural, organic. It does not exist. You cannot have a natural scent of strawberry because it degrades with oxygen. So it's a flake, but everything is chemical really. And this one has been studied with 2 or 3 other aromas as going faster to the amygdala, depending on the heavy molecules that travel. So strawberry works. Yes.
With doing the core protocol, someone with Tourette's noticed that there was a surge of Tourette behavior. And when I researched it, it's the dopaminergic pathway that is troublesome with causing the Tourette's. So I wondered if you had any idea. That's my son, Josh. I taught this for 2 months. So I tried this with him, and more alert, more with it, better speech. But then suddenly they were sitting down and he did that very suddenly. And we hadn't seen that for a while because his medications had it under control. But then, so I just eased right off this.
Yeah.
But I'm just not sure what to do.
No. Well, because there is way more. And this is why when I do an assessment, I see beyond. And something that is going to always work may have also a consequence on something. And you say medication. Medication act, you remember that cells don't touch. So most neuroleptic, psychodrugs, all the things that helps mood, behavior, work at that level. And they sort of lie to the brain. Everything is okay, we're here. If you start to have the brain do a better job, it may disrupt, no studies, this is a personal conclusion, it may disrupt a little bit what the meds was doing. So it takes time to just readapt. We'll never stop medication, of course, but we follow the kid. And this is why parents who are doing Mendability every 2 weeks fill in a report. These are the changes. And so we change the set of exercises according to what parents say. So there is a lot to it. And Tourette is a complicated one, for sure. So
Tourette's was the dopa and dopamine, and serotonin was with OCD.
Yeah.
So the meds that treat OCD work the serotonin path.
Yeah. The only issue with meds really is they work at taming the situation. They don't fix the brain. So it's good to have 2 plans. So
I'm going to interrupt you here. I'd like to take 5 minutes to just talk to you about what it looks like to do Mendability at home, and then we'll close. But if you have questions, we can stay and talk. So I'm going to skip over that. It was a Discovery Channel feature. They interviewed some families who've been doing Mendability. They saw great things happen. That's the short version. I have a clip here from Temple Grandin that I'm also going to skip over. She obviously. Okay. Here, then this is your 90-second summary. Think about everything we've talked about. What is sensory enrichment? How does it help the brain? Well, this is Temple Grandin's summary of what is sensory enrichment. See if you would say the same thing as she does. She obviously doesn't endorse different things, but she does mention sensory enrichment in her most recent book. No, this one here. Oh, do you know why? Because I have to turn the volume up.
Now, scientists have learned a whole lot of things about the brain, But before I get into this slide, I want to talk about a brand new study that's just been done with sensory at the University of California in Irvine by Dr. Wu and Dr. Leon. And they took kids with autism that had speech delay, 4 to 12 years old, and they did a controlled study. And half the kids got the sensory treatment, half the kids were controls, and then whatever treatments they were already doing, ABA or speech therapy or whatever, those just continued. And they added these half-hour session in the morning, a half-hour session in the afternoon of all kinds of sensory stimulation. And the key to it is novelty. You have to walk on different types of floor surfaces, smell different odors, doing lots of activities in mirrors, putting things in jars, but you've got to look in the mirror and do it. Novelty, always changing it. And the other thing is engaging more than one sense in each activity. There's music involved in it. And the other thing that makes this really good is they use really cheap things that you would have in the house. Okay, a lot of people already have mirrors. You do things like walk on the rug versus walk on the wood floor. You put this cardboard down, they can walk on that. It's not a bunch of expensive stuff here. And they had some very good results. Even in the older kids, they were 8, 9, 12 years old, there were improvements in speech, improvements in behavior, both on the parent's assessment, which of course is not blind, and on the professional assessment, which was done by a researcher completely blind to treatment. This is pretty exciting stuff.
Yes, pretty exciting stuff. So, Cody's only one person, and there are a lot of, people that she would like to work with. A few years ago, a parent who Cody had worked with his daughter and she'd made amazing progress, came along and talked to her about how can we develop this? How can we reach more people? And they brought in an automation engineer and spent time making the online system that we have today. Basically, Mendability has 2 kinds of services. You can do you can use our system online and get worksheets and be working and doing exercises at home. And we have coaches who can help you do that, stay on track, make sure you know how to do your exercises. And then a very limited number of people get to have Claudie's time, and she can totally customize the ideal program for your child, create new exercises that were perfectly adapted to that child's needs, work towards specific goals. So we've got 2 systems. We've got our online system that they try to automate lots of the decision making that Claudie uses to determine what exercises a child needs, and then the guru expertise. So what does it look like to be doing? I'm just going to skip over that. This is how some of the decision making behind the AI, the automated system. I'm just trying to skip through this. So 2 of the key tools to the online system are a baseline questionnaire and a progress test, because the system wants to know, first of all, what are the person's strengths and weaknesses, and then what's going on. So the baseline questionnaire is long and detailed. You would do that at the beginning of starting to do sensory enrichment therapy. And then every 2 weeks, before you get a new worksheet, you fill out a much shorter progress test to say, I see something happening here, or I don't know if this is progress, but he did this and he hasn't done that before, that kind of thing. So there's this constant feedback, and the online system will then give you a new worksheet based on what you report. They'll say, okay, it seems like your brain is progressing in this area, so here are some exercises to build on that. When you get to work with Claudie, she can totally customize things. So sometimes a parent, after 3 or 4 days of some exercises, will give her feedback and say, guess what? This just happened. And that's when Claudie leaps in and says, well, if that's happening, we're going to move on to this right now. So the the online system is the exercises that they used in the published studies, but it's the 2-week pattern, and everything's programmed to be kind of safe and cautious. Whereas if you work with Claudie, sometimes results are faster because if she can see something happening, or if she's had direct observation and interaction with you, with the individual, then she can say, okay, we can go, you know, we can stretch this far, we can do this extra, we can do this faster. So I talked about those two things. We have the coach online program and we have working with Claudie. This is an example of a worksheet. Every worksheet, usually people do 2 sessions a day, maybe 10 minutes in the morning, before school, after school. We really want to help you succeed. So we can work with you to make it adapt to your routines. And then every exercise has written instructions and video instructions. And like I said, our coaches are there to help you make it work with your child. So we've tried to be as helpful as we can. This is an example of a set of instructions on what that looks like. Coach support and platinum, that's what we call the service that Claudie works with for individuals. This is the pricing. This is in US dollars, and it's really easy to sign up. We've done our best to make it home-based, right? The exercises are things that you can do at home. The equipment is mostly things that you have at home. And you can sign up online. It's just a matter of going to mendability.com, click on the sign up button in the top right, and click get started. This is what our sign up page looks like. Really easy, and then you just click on one of these buttons, and that's at mendability.com, and in the top right there's a button that says sign up. So we tried to be as, you know, family friendly and as helpful as we can. We're here in Vancouver for the next 2 days, for Friday and Saturday. So Claudie has time if anybody wants to book a 2-hour slot to come and meet with her for an assessment. And what she does is do we call it a baseline questionnaire. It's a really detailed brain profile of where that person's at. It could be the beginning of starting to work with Claudie in the Platinum program, or it could be doing an assessment to get a really perfect picture of that person, so that if they're going on to do the coach program, their starting point is absolutely accurate. If you're interested in booking an appointment with Claudie, the easiest way to do it is to go to mendability.com/book. And you'd want to do that tonight or tomorrow morning first thing, because we're just here for Friday and Saturday. And that assessment costs $500 US. Tonight, if you're wondering what next, what do I get started with, if you've heard something that made you think, wow, you know, our brains are amazing and they can do wonderful things, there's an evaluation form on your sheet, and please do something. You might not be sure if you want to do the therapy, if you want to start right now, but if you would like to share your email with us, we'd love to at least send you our newsletter. Stay in touch, let you know the kind of things that we're doing. So I'm going to stop talking now so that you have a chance for questions. I kind of rushed through that last part, but I hope you feel like you've heard something useful tonight, that you've learned something new, and that sensory enrichment therapy has in trials and in individual cases has achieved some really wonderful results. And yeah, so I will stop there, and thank you very much for your participation. If you have any questions, I'm going to ask Claudie to come up, and then you can get the guru answer. Sorry, yeah.
My son has epilepsy too. His seizure is controlled by medicine epibar, but does epibar, affect his brain function and the effects badly about his low mood, tired, always tired, never excited, very kind of like zombie, very tired, very few energy.
So what is the question?
So I'd like to know about the side effects of epilepsy medicine.
Yeah.
Can affect, and is it better to change or this works even he used this medicine?
A lot of people we work with are on medications because it's hard to find us. And when you find us, because you're still looking after finding things that help you for the moment. So if you don't touch the meds you are on, and the brain gradually catches up the territory, and then you talk to your doctor, maybe we could reduce, but that is your conversation with the expert who prescribes. It will not prevent the brain from getting better, if that is a question.
The lady behind her has a question as well.
Yeah, so I was wondering the clinical trials that you have, the exercises that were done, because you have two models here. So what was the model that was used?
Well, the difference between the clinical trial and anybody picking up a therapy, it was not tailored for them. They all were doing that for 2 weeks and then that for 2 weeks, even if the children were moving in the different directions, where the therapy is the same, like some exercises would be the same, but it will be constantly retailored for your child. So no two kids get the same. That's the difference. It was a standard, but it's possible to have it and do just that. It's the list of exercises is on the publication. It's free access online. You look environmental enrichment autism, and then you have the articles come up and you can read everything they did. So it's completely available.
How is age actually matters?
It doesn't.
Because you see, we're so programmed from very early that, you know, if your child doesn't speak before 3, then they say if your child doesn't speak before 5. So now the more we learn, but have you seen any difference at all?
No, and in fact, it's one of the studies that we could not explain broadly. Because 1,000 people, they all were between 2 days old till 91 years old. I worked with people with dementia. There is not a difference in the type of speed of improvement or the kind of improvement. And I said that before. You come with the brain, and whatever is around the brain doesn't matter. The brain is what we work with. So, no, we haven't seen the difference. Sometimes it goes faster with older adult people because they want to get better. Where small children, they couldn't care less. So it's harder to do the exercise with them.
Well, thank you all for coming this evening, and we're here if you want to come and ask any individual questions. Nice to meet you. Thank you. Oh, and if you filled out an evaluation form, would you come and give it to me, and then I can collect them? That'd be great. Thanks.